Welcome to the show Goldsquadrongays. It's the podcast where two Star Wars loving gays talk about and review their favorite Star Wars content while also being gay as hell. I'm your host, Bradley Brower.
I'm your other host, Charles Rogers, and I was going to make a Has-Been Hotel joke, but there are literally too many funny lines for me to do it. Go watch Has-Been Hotel. It's very funny.
I would not have gotten that joke.
Whatever joke I'd ended up using, it was between a couple. They were mostly song lyrics, but also the thing about comedy, here's the bad thing about comedy, right? Is if you're trying to pitch a comedy to somebody, the inclination is to use all the best lines from it. And then when they go to watch the thing, the lines aren't as funny because they've already heard them.
So like the trailer for most comedy movies.
Yes. That's the problem with trying to pitch a comedy movie, is you have to pick the mid-tier jokes and rely on them to be funny.
Right.
Anyway, Has-Been Hotel good, especially if you like show tunes and just dark-ass humor. I really enjoyed the show. Before we get into our topic for the episode today, really quick up front, we didn't prepare anything, but as of recording this, it is the 3rd of February, and unfortunately, Carl Weathers, who plays Greef Karga in The Mandalorian, did unfortunately pass away yesterday. So we do want to acknowledge up front, and that sucks, man.
Yeah.
That sucks.
That's sad.
R.I.P. to Mr. Weathers. His performance in The Mandalorian was fantastic. His directing work was just fun. But he's also had a long and storied career even before he made it to The Mandalorian. So it's a great loss for entertainment that he is no longer with us. Bradley, we're just going to move right along into the episode because I don't think we have any really big production news or anything we have to talk about today. Percy Jackson still won't give us season 2.
Now we're going to get into the problem of you're going to say stuff like that, and then things are going to happen, and we're not going to talk about the fact that you're like, I said last week that they didn't get a season 2, and then the season 2 announcement is going to be like tomorrow as of recording, and you're going to be like, you're going to feel so silly.
Yeah, this did happen. You see, Bradley, I will not feel silly because I'm doing it deliberately. I have learned the power that we possess.
That's right.
I have learned the abilities that you and I possess. And so I am now trying to weaponize those abilities for good to get myself a Percy Jackson season 2 renewal. But we are not talking about Percy Jackson. What are we talking about today, Bradley?
Today we're talking about Ahsoka, episode 6, part 6, Far, Far Away, where the search for Grand Admiral Thrawn reaches beyond the limits of the galaxy. Charles, what is one thing you liked about this episode and one thing you did not?
I really, really love visually how this episode looks. I have a note later on that it's very Lord of the Rings. Return of the King is my favorite movie of all time. I have watched that trilogy probably more times than I've watched the original Star Wars trilogy, which is kind of surprising given I make a Star Wars show. But I just love the feel of this episode. I think it's so weird and interesting. I think the choices that they made with the design of the Noti and the design of the bandits and the design of the tower and all of that were really great, interesting choices. One thing I didn't like... So I can sort of understand that Ahsoka doesn't have much of a presence in this episode. She's at the beginning and mentioned at the end and also once during the episode. But if we're going to have an episode that almost exclusively focuses on Sabine, I feel like the Sabine of it all was lost in the weeds a little bit. She has a character, and we'll get to some of the neat character moments she has in this episode. But for the first half of it, it's kind of the reverse of the last episode. The first half, she's not really a presence in it because we're so hyperfixated on what we're hyperfixated on. And then we get to the back half of this and we're like, oh, this was supposed to be the Sabine episode. And we follow Sabine. So I wish Sabine had a little more of a presence and some agency in the first half of the episode rather than just being yanked from being in prison to being in, standing around. So that was my only gripe with it. Bradley, what about you? One thing you liked and one thing you did not.
One thing I liked about this episode was that it felt like, oh, now we're giving our antagonists, our villains, something to do. Like, we really got into more of the weeds of this is a villains episode, and I really liked it. The thing I didn't like, which is kind of somewhat similar to yours, I think it should have just been no Sabine. I really rather would have just taken her out of it completely, and then we had more time to spend with Shin and Balin and Thrawn and all the other characters. I think it would have just, I don't know, for me, if you're gonna do that, have this kind of episode without Ahsoka, like let's go really far, to the right, and like let's just have everybody who's evil just be like the main focus this season, and then have Sabine. She can be doing stuff in the background, but like it's not as important until next week, maybe, something like that. Maybe that's just what I would have liked more. So I just like structurally wise, I probably would have liked to focus more on the antagonists this episode, just to kind of get more motivation and things from them.
I have a note you're going to find really interesting.
Great.
I have a note that might actually have fixed that problem for you.
Oh, okay.
But we'll get to it when we get to it.
Section 1. Ahsoka and Huyang traveling through hyperspace in a Purgle. Ahsoka mentions Sabine willingly joining the enemy, and Huyang sees it as the Force guiding her. To pass the time, Huyang begins a story which begins with "A long time ago in a galaxy far, far away." Title card, Part 6, Far, Far Away.
I must once again say that the show is beautiful. The
Yeah,
shot of the
is this
Purrgil.
different hyperspace? Like, or it's like slightly different
This is slightly different hyperspace, yeah.
that we've
It's
seen
like
previously?
colorful.
Yeah, it's like rainbowy almost. I
Mhm.
liked it a lot, actually.
I wonder if this is like natural hyperspace, like this is what hyperspace actually is, and the hyperspace that their technology taps into is just the blue, because we also know from the High Republic that and we also know from like Rebels and other things that messing with hyperspace can turn it different colors. It can turn it red.
Oh, that's right.
hmm
Like,
So
yeah,
I
when they
wonder
pull
if
them out, yeah, it's like
I wonder if the Purrgil are traveling like on a different spectrum of light,
ooh, I like that.
and the technology they have can only do the blue.
Oh, okay. I like that. I like a little fake science throwing in
Yeah, we'll
there.
do some
Like,
fake science in our space fantasy story. So
sure.
people will confuse it with science fiction for decades. It's not, it's space fantasy, but
I love it. I'm gonna make that my headcanon that the Purgle use rainbow waves to travel through space. So there you go.
absolutely. Huyang and Ahsoka have this wonderful little conversation. I do like the history of the galaxy parts 1, 2, and 3 that she says 1 is the best. Because like prequels, originals, and sequels, obviously Ahsoka thinks the prequels are the best.
That's so funny to me.
Like that this whole scene is one giant like meta love letter to Star Wars, like just the little lines that they have and then the one at the end.
Well, also, it's just like, I mean, this is the first time we've actually just said "a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away" out loud. Like, we've said that out loud. It's not just a little text in the beginning of the movie anymore.
No, and they're doing it because they're going to a galaxy far, far away.
I know it's clever, and it's also a nice homage at the same time. Like, it's
It's
like,
like,
I love it.
oh, Dave, we see what you did there, but it's pandering to us, so it's fine. There is also some interesting dynamics happening between Ahsoka and Huyang in the scene when they talk about Sabine. That Ahsoka clearly still has doubts about Sabine because she knows that Sabine went with Baylan willingly. But she does seem more open to listening to Huyang now and sort of listening to the Force, which I found a really interesting beat for the character. It's great. I love this scene. If this was the only scene we got, it was a good scene.
If the two like if Ahsoka only has to be in one scene in this whole entire episode, I guess this is okay. Like, this is not a bad like little intro to the show. Now, my only gripe with it is it does nothing to set up the episode or tease it any other way other than giving Sabine some kind of explanation, be like it's the Force guiding her, but I don't know. It doesn't really connect too much to her story in this episode, like as much as I would like it to. Like, I feel like they should have set her up a little bit more.
It could have gone anywhere, like realistically in the episode. Like if you could drop it in the middle of the episode, you could drop it at the end of the episode. It really doesn't matter where in the episode this scene goes. I like it at the beginning because of Huyang's line that implies that they're going to be in there for a while. So I do like that, but really you can put the core meat of the scene basically anywhere.
Section 2. Sabine wakes up in a prison cell. The Eye emerges from hyperspace at Peridia, and Elspeth states how the planet was the ancient homeworld of her people, the Dathomiri, and how her ancestors were the first to ride the Purgle. Baylan remarks on the planet's nature as a Purgle graveyard as the Eye passes through the planet's rings, which are made up of Purgle bones, and Shin collects Sabine from her cell, and the two, along with Morgan and Baylan, travel to the surface. The group meets three Night Sisters known as the Great Mothers. Morgan confirms that the Night Sisters' visions guided her across the stars. One witch remarks that Ren stinks of the Jedi and marks her as dangerous, restricting her and sending her away to a prison cell. So we have three new actors, Charles. Would
We
you
have
like to
three new
know?
actors in this. Do we want to talk about? Do we want to talk about these? Because there's one of these actors that I real fucking want to talk about.
Oh, really? Okay.
We'll see. We'll see if you know why one of these actors fucking floored me when I heard her voice.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm just going to go in the order that I guess I just randomly did it. We'll start with Gerald Prescott. She is playing one of the Night Sister mothers. Her character name on the IMDb is called Actropa. That's her name. I didn't know that. She's known for The Walking Dead, Swamp Thing, and a show called All the Queen's Men. Next up, we have
Now,
Claudia.
side note, I haven't watched Swamp Thing, but her character's name seems to imply she's playing some sort of magic user. Let me double check that real fast. This is the thing Charles didn't research.
Like her name in
Ye-
Swamp Thing.
Your name in Swamp Thing seems to imply, yeah, if this is the same character that I'm Googling, it's a comic book mystic. So she plays a very witchy character in Swamp Thing, apparently.
Gotcha. Okay.
Which this may be a reference. Her casting may be a reference to that, but she has apparently played a witchy, at least a character who in the comic books is more witchy. All right, who's next?
Next up, we have Claudia Black. Her character name is Clotho. I don't know how you say that. She is known for Farscape, Final Space, and lots of video game voices such as Uncharted: The Lost Legacy.
Wow, you fucking phenomenally failed at researching this woman. Okay. Claudia Black is a nerd goddess who has been in so much sci-fi shit, it's insane. The thing she is the most known for, I think, in the movie sphere is actually the movie Pitch Black with Vin Diesel, the very first Riddick movie. She's in that movie. However, when you looked at the list of video games, Bradley, that she's in, including such things as Gears of War 4, Destiny 2, the Uncharted games, Mass Effect 3, and also Mass Effect 2, did you maybe notice a particular series on here that I've mentioned once or twice or 300,000 times?
No.
No? She is a mainstay of the Dragon Age series from BioWare, otherwise known as that other thing I don't shut up about. She's the voice of Morrigan. Morrigan is one of the main characters of the series. She is a witch of the wilds. So if you're a Dragon Age fan and you heard this voice and you went, well, what have we here? That's Claudia Black. That's Morrigan.
She plays a witch in the Dragon Age video game series, and that's it. Nothing else. Okay, moving on.
Don't you dare cut that out, Bradley. I will fucking kill you.
And last, but certainly not least, we have Jane Edwina Seymour, who's playing, her character name is Lachesis.
Lachesis, I'm sure there's a reason for these names.
I know. You know what?
But I
I
don't know
probably
what it
should
is.
have gone on Wikipedia and looked at like what their names were, or if they mean anything or anything, but I didn't see anything. So, she is known for Star Trek Card and Deadly Women.
Now, I
So-
couldn't find any, like, witchy roles for her, the same way I could find for the other two with Madame Xanadu and Morrigan. But she did play she was the body double for the Borg Queen. Or played the Borg Queen body double in Picard, which was the closest I could find.
Yep. So that's the three witches of Dathomir.
That's
Well,
the three witches.
The three witches, the three Night Sisters, we should say.
We'll get to the number three, the Great Mothers, in a second here. First, I want to talk about the little exchange that Balin and Shin have. Oh, not Balin and Shin. Balin and Sabine have, where he's like, "I would have thought that you would have had some time for reflection," and Sabine's like, "Yeah, I don't really do that." Balin goes, "Yeah, I can tell." Love their dynamic. Anyway, we then get Night Sister lore. How you feeling about Night Sister lore, Bradley? That you're in a renaissance right now. Good lord.
We are eating good on Night Sisters. Ahsoka show said Night Sister rights. We're gonna get every single. They're like, we're just gonna put a little bit. Once they show up, we're just gonna have a little bit every episode. You're just gonna get a little bit more, and now after our Bad Batch trailer, now we're just getting a Night Sister Renaissance, and I feel like season 2 is really gonna punch it too. So we'll see. I'm
Yeah, we'll
excited.
come back to that Bad Batch trailer here at the end of the episode. Yeah, we find out Peridia was the original homeworld of the Dathomiri, that what we think of as the Night Sisters are, in fact, the descendants of people who harnessed and rode the star whales across to our galaxy to settle on Dathomir, which is a lot to take in.
Yeah, I'm like, you're just gonna keep giving us stuff, Dave, aren't you? You're just gonna keep
Yeah.
giving this to
Yeah.
us.
Dave fucking loves the Night Sisters. He's just going to keep writing shit. Also, I mean, everybody loves the Night Sisters. We're constantly getting little crumbs of Night Sister stuff. It was pointed out to me there's a short story by Dave Filoni's wife in, I think it's Stories of Jedi and Sith, about this young Dathomiri girl. It was pointed out to me that it's highly likely that story is about Morgan Elsbeth. So now I have to go back and reread that and be like, is this Morgan? But it's written by Dave's wife,
Oh,
which I
interesting.
recently learned. Maybe in the intervening time between episodes, I'll go back and read my copy of Stories of Jedi and Sith. Because I remember that story being weirdly out of place at the time.
But now.
But now, is it Stories of Jedi and Sith? It might be. I have to look into it. Anyway, that was a digression. Peridia, we finally do kind of figure out how the whales know how to get here. This is a graveyard. It's instinctual.
Right. They come here to die.
They come here to die. Ezra and Ahsoka just harnessed. When they both did their thing, they both tapped into like factory reset default settings
Right.
for the Purrgil and rode them back to wherever the default setting is, which is wherever they are, they know how to get to this point. It's like I was going to make a thing about bird migrations and then realized that I don't know how bird migrations actually work.
I was gonna say probably about the same as much information he knows about actual whale migrations. So there you go.
Yes, yeah, same deal. It's like this is a graveyard for them. It's kind of like I think how like fish and stuff know how to like they know where their spawning grounds are. They instinctually pretty much know how to find these places. The whales pretty much know how to find this graveyard, and so both Ezra and Ahsoka were able to tap into the same default settings. There's your answer. There's how they managed to do this. So for everyone saying I don't understand how this worked, this is how it worked.
Right.
I love the little awkward landing ride down to the surface of Peridia when they're all in this like shaking shuttle and everybody's staring forward except for Shin who's just like staring at Sabine.
She, I like, yeah. Well, first of all, I have to point out Morgan using just droids to do everything for her, which is great.
Yes.
I do love that. For
Or her
somebody
like
who's
weird
supposed to
little
be,
mercenary guys, but yeah, her
right.
droids do all her piloting.
Yeah, for someone who's like a magic user, I just find it interesting that she's very heavy on droid usage. Like, I find that interesting.
I do want to note how the statues on the surface appear very randomly placed. We know these are ruins of the witch kingdom. They call it the witch kingdom of Dathomir later on in the episode, which is interesting that they use kingdom for the witch kingdom of Dathomir. But we don't have time to unpack that. This is not an archaeology podcast. But I do want to note that the statues on the surface being random reminds me a bit of the statues on the surface of Malachor.
Oh, okay.
They're not the same statues. Like these are obviously very different. They're carved with the like Night Sister appearances, the ones that we will see down the line later on in Dathomir itself. But their sort of random placement and then their shape sort of reminds me of the surface above the Sith superweapon and Malachor. Just want to point that out.
So I'm live giving you an answer to your question you had early on about the three Night
Okay.
Sisters because I forgot that I wrote it down.
Okay.
So here you go. The three witches, Actropah, Clotho, and Laxus, are clearly named after the three fates of Greek mythology.
I have in my notes later on that they're meant to invoke the three fates. I just didn't look up what the three fates' names actually are. Okay,
I can tell you, and it's almost identical.
They're the three fates.
Yeah, it's Atropos, Clotho, and Lachis, or whatever. So it's very similar.
Wow, fake Percy Jackson fan. Doesn't
I was just about to say
the names of the fates.
Yikes! I didn't know my Greek mythology. Oh, awkward.
Actually, it literally is my next note. You have sniped my note out from under me again.
Well, there you go. That's
well
because
done.
I'm in charge of notes now, I guess.
Yes, the three witches are direct references to the three fates from Greek mythology. You'll recognize them from such things as the recent Percy Jackson show and also Hercules. They're the ones cutting the string in Hercules, which is also probably why their magic that they use in this episode sort of looks thread-like, and they reference a thread later on.
Right.
They're
Now it all
also
makes sense.
they're also kind of, because again we're seeing this repeated pattern of threes. They reminded me of the three witches from Macbeth,
Which are probably
which are
based on the
probably
three
references to
fates.
the three fates. But specifically because we were talking about Macbeth earlier in our
Ah,
coverage of
yes.
Ahsoka. My next note, purely for me and no one else, is oh god, it's Morrigan. That was just for me. It's my immediate reaction. God, I love Claudia Black so much. She's so fucking cool. They refer to the Night Sisters here as the Great Mothers. So we don't know if these are ancient or whether or not they're like descendants or if they're like original Great Mothers from thousands of years ago that are still just sort of hanging out. It's very unclear what they are. They
Right.
certainly look like regular old Night Sisters. They look like Talzin.
Well, I was thinking maybe they're all that's left of whatever is left on the planet, I guess, and they just happen to be at that status of mother status, I guess, which is
Well, we don't see any. Their goal is to flee the planet. We don't see any living Night Sisters with them.
right.
We'll get to what else is here in a couple of notes down. But I love that Sabine. They look over at Sabine, and Sabine's like, "Sup? I'm also here."
Yeah, they're like, who's this bitch? Get her out of here.
I love it. I love how sassy Sabine is, even when being captured. It's very rebel of her.
What I don't love, though, however, is she goes from one prison cell to another one immediately, and it's like, huh? Why are we doing like one after the
We're
other?
we're
Like,
shuffling her from cell to cell
yeah, it's just like I don't understand it.
for some reason.
Yeah, it doesn't really make a lot of sense, but whatever.
Yeah, I guess they want to keep her close to hand. I guess they don't want to leave her on the because they take the mercenaries with them. I guess they don't want to leave her on the Eye of Sion with a bunch of droids, especially if she
Yeah, I
is
guess so.
able to use the Force. They don't want her alone on the ship with droids.
That's
So they
true, I
probably
guess.
want to keep her close by just in case Balin and Shin need to intercept her. Balin did make a very specific promise to her, which is we will let you go find Ezra. So in order to do that, she has to be on the surface, and they don't really want to waste any time waiting for her to come down to the ship so they can do their thing. It's better just have her and kind of shove her out the door and go, okay, there you go. Tee hee. Have fun. Bye.
That's true. Now, my other, not, I don't want to call it a complaint, but my other thing about this scene is why do they single her out as being reeking of Jedi when Balin and Shin are right there and Balin has been a Jedi before? And I don't think your smell changes based on what you
They
mentally
kind
believe
of
you are.
They kind of explain it in that Balin, like he talks about, he left the Jedi Order a long time ago. He really does not seem to be like, because Jedi isn't a power set, right? It's not a physical
Right.
thing. It's a mentality. It's a belief system. He clearly does not believe that anymore. Shen, he explicitly states later in the episode, he never never trained to be a Jedi.
Sure.
Sabine was specifically trained to be a Jedi by Ahsoka. I think that's what's going on here.
Gotcha. Section 3. While Evil Incorporated waits for Thrawn, Balin and Shin discuss Peridia and hint at Balin's true intention. Sabine, once again in confinement, attempts to open the cell door using the Force. Though the cell begins to rumble, she looks out the window to see the arrival of an Imperial Star Destroyer, the Chimera. The ship descends to meet the group. Grand Admiral Thrawn, accompanied by night troopers, greets his allies, acknowledging Elspeth's role in ending their exile. He introduces Captain of the Guard Enoch and mentions a cargo transfer agreement with the Night Sisters. Thrawn reunites with Sabine and decides to let her go. She is given a mount and heads out in search for Ezra. Thrawn later explains that he allowed Ren to leave to find Bridger only so that Shin and Balin can follow and destroy them both.
This whole section you just read is like a solid third of my notes.
Good. Okay, let's get
Maybe
into
even
it then.
half my notes are this section alone. I find the dynamic between Shin and Balin really interesting. I think that Balin being such a realist and, he dismisses Peridia as children's stories and then he feels overwhelmed when they turn out to be true. All of this but he's got this history with all this history, essentially. He's got this history with this mythology that Shin does not have. Shin's just sort of along for the ride. Shin only knows what Balin has told her, which I find really interesting because there's parts of it she clearly doesn't understand. There's parts of it that clearly he hasn't told her, which I think is just a really neat dynamic between the two of them. It's a very warped Master Padawan relationship that
Right.
he's not training her to be the best version of herself. He's training her to be who he wants her to be, who he thinks she should be.
Yeah, and I was thinking like I almost wonder if they keep going with this and they push it a little bit more, I think you could maybe she would come to maybe somehow resent him in some way, only because like I think she's more interested in the power and becoming a better version of herself, really.
Right.
And which is kind of clear because I think she mentions in this bit, she's like, "Oh, we're gonna get some more power or whatever," and he's like,
Yeah.
no, that's not the most important thing. Like he's like, what's important is XYZ. And so I feel like she may come to resent him for this, and then that's maybe hopefully the turning point for her character. And she's like, nah, I'm not gonna live for him. I'm gonna live for myself, kind of thing. So maybe we'll see a change in her character following.
Well, she's also been living in an echo chamber for so long with him, basically just bouncing back and forth. She hasn't had any exposure to other Force users beyond Balin. So she's much more susceptible to the dark side because she was not given he's almost kind of repeated the same mistake of the Jedi, but worse this time. She has not in any way been given the tools to deal with the temptation of the dark side. She is not at all prepared to deal with like that creeping influence, that lust for power, that desire to be stronger than other people. It's these two actors do so much with these scenes. They are just chewing the hell out of the scenery.
Which it's this exact scene, which is why I wanted more of just these characters doing their own stuff by their like by themselves this episode. Because it just like it was like, oh wait, now we're actually getting into like what Balin is trying to do. Like, what is he trying to do? Like, I want to know
Yeah,
more.
because we find out he was at the temple, Jedi temple apparently, when it fell, because he talks about watching it fall or watching it burn. Or it kind of could be in the metaphorical sense because they seem to be conflating the Jedi temple with the Jedi Order when they talk.
Yeah.
So he might be talking metaphorically about watching the Jedi burn, and she says the temple. But he also talks about how, and this is so funny that he says this line, he says it's all inevitable. It repeats again and again, talking about the same cycles over and over and over again, which is a common criticism of Star Wars.
Right.
That the same things just happen over and over and over again. I'm like, bro, that's a common criticism of history.
And I like how he said that he's going to break the cycle.
That's what he thinks he's going to do.
Right.
We know he won't be successful because we've seen the sequels. We know he won't. But he's identified this issue, which is that it's this constant repeating cycle that
right.
he feels like he needs to break. But that's not how history works, and that's not how society works. It's unfortunate, and you can have these bold ambitions, but the reality of the situation is that's not going to work out for you. I do love the Force fake out.
Oh, where she's trying
Where
to
she's
escape.
pushing it. It's like, oh, she might be doing it. She might be doing it. And then the Chimera appears behind her.
Oh, so good.
The direction in this episode is fucking stellar. My God. This shot and the shot when they're coming down through the cloud bank and we see the statue through the window. And then we see more of the environment of Peridia. A plus shot. Masterclass shot. Anyway, that is the Chimera. You can see where, because Bradley, you watched Rebels right before watching this show.
I did. So I immediately recognized the nice tattoo on the bottom of the ship.
You can also recognize where the Purrgil grabbed it.
Right. Yeah. So you can see the damaged bits that have been replaced slash fixed slash detailed differently. I don't know.
They're almost kind of doing that thing where they fill it in with gold.
Well, yes.
I forget the name of it's
called something. It's a practice.
It's called something. It's a Japanese practice where you take a broken object and you fill it together with gold. Kylo Ren's mask does this in The Rise of Skywalker. That's what they do with it, where they forge his mask back together. But it almost kind of looks like that. It's cool.
I like it.
We are taken immediately. If you are like me and you're a terrible human being, then you were taken from the awe-inspiring majesty of seeing live-action Chimera to going, is it fucking lowering itself down onto the dick tower?
I love how you only saw that because I definitely did not. I did not even register in my brain.
It's not me. It's not me. There were so many jokes when this episode came out about specifically shots of the tower going up into the bottom of the Chimera. So many jokes about this. I love this for Star Wars fans.
Well, I love it for two reasons. One, because obviously sexual innuendo. But the other reason is practicality for it. I'm trying to think like the shape of the Star Destroyer and then it's coming down onto the top of the platform, but it like I can't really tell if it's resting on it and then they just like turn off the ships, or like the propulsors are still making it like float. So it's still being like it's still on, like it's still not,
I remember some controversy when, because I think Legends had established that capital ships like this couldn't do low orbit
right,
or right above the ground. And I remember controversy when Rogue One came out over the Star Destroyer that's parked above Jeddah, that is in
right.
low orbit above Jeddah. They don't seem to care,
Right, because isn't the
really.
controversy or whatever? It's that like it would have it's an object that large would have its own orbit to a degree of some kind. So it would be like
Well, it would get you would have to be put. There would have to be some sort of repulsors. You had to push it up
right,
constantly. It's not just going to float. Like if you put something in orbit, right? The way that my understanding of how physics works, and I did my degree in screenwriting, so I obviously do not know
so you're
how
obviously a
physics
master
works.
in science
Oh,
and
clearly.
math and
Is the way orbit works is that you're still falling, but you're kind of falling around the planet.
right,
Right? You're
constantly, yeah.
falling in such a way that you're falling constantly and you just kind of the gravity, you spin around it. If you get too low, then eventually the angle becomes such that you gradually start to get closer and closer and closer to the planet, and then eventually you crash into it. So this is obviously too low, but it's a fantasy, so we don't really care.
Right.
I mean, penetration will always find a way, Bradley, to make physics work for it.
Why not? Let's just go with it. I think it
Oh, I'm
works.
going to hell.
It's great. I love it.
I'm going to hell. Oh boy. Look, we all knew Thrawn is a bottom, okay? We all knew it. His ship should reflect the Christ. I'm going straight to hell.
No, they won't even accept you there because that's how annoying you are.
Bradley's just giving me a look like I'm gonna have to cut all this out later.
Oh, all of it.
Shout out once again to the music, which rules. The blaring like organs.
Yeah, this has like a
Thrawn
different
appears.
like the music totally changed when they were like, "Oh, let's introduce Thrawn now." And it was like,
Yep.
"Whoa."
Because it's a total change for the show. The show
Yeah.
has now altered by Thrawn's presence, and so the music has changed slightly. And also, it's a variation of his original theme in Rebels. Before we get to Thrawn, we get a look at the Night Troopers. And maybe you can help me with this, Bradley. I'm not sure what to make of them. I don't
Okay.
like them.
No. I'm trying to
not
look at my
wild
Funko
about
Pop
them.
version right now. So I like the gold and the holding, the broken bits together, just like the ship. It's very, it's supposed to be the same thing, obviously. And then can you just look up what that's called so we can actually say it, so we don't have to keep dancing around like whatever that's called?
Yeah.
Because I feel bad not mentioning it, and it's like clearly a major part of this episode.
I am almost certainly mispronouncing this word, for which I apologize. Kintsugi.
Okay,
Is the actual name of the concept. According to Wikipedia, it's the Japanese art of repairing broken pottery by mending the areas of a breakage with an urushi lacquer dusted or mixed with powdered gold, silver, or platinum. As a philosophy, it treats breakage and repair as part of the history of an object rather than something to disguise.
Okay. I like that part of the design. I'm not sure. I mean, I don't mind the red. I think the red is supposed to invoke obviously the Night Sisters and just kind of being like they're clearly a part of this. I mean, practically, it doesn't make any sense. I have no idea why they need fabric on their outfits. It doesn't do anything. And I'm trying to look at the Wikipedia page and see like anything about them, but they're just interesting. I mean, they're not really that much different other than just being weird, and we don't know what they are yet.
Yeah, and I don't think we really find out, because when I first watched them,
Yeah.
when I first saw them, I thought the idea of having night troopers, obviously they invoke the Night Sisters. The idea of having these troopers who've kind of gone feral was really interesting. That their design is all dirty, they're no longer uniform, they've patched together what they can, but they're still maintaining that imperial sense of a lack of individuality. I found really interesting in the design. We just really don't get any good explanation what they are. Like, are they supposed to be the troops that went there on the Star Destroyer with Thrawn? We also find out there's another wrinkle that's going to be tossed into it in episode 8. I'm not 100% sure. I guess we'll really get into them when we get to episode 8.
Yeah,
When we get to
I'll
the fight
save
scene.
I'll save the description because there is a little explanation for them a little bit later on. So, and I think we
Okay.
really don't get most of that until later on. But it does say some things about them that we'll come back to. So yeah, let's wait until that episode and then we'll
Okay.
go into the night.
Let's talk about the two new actors that are in this scene. We didn't do it up
Sure.
top. We didn't do it up top, but they both are going to make appearances very quickly, so we might as well just talk about both of them.
Let's do it. Starting with the biggest and the best and the greatest and the bluest.
These are all words.
These are all things describing him. I'm just kidding. Reprising his role now in live action, previously only voiced in Star Wars Rebels, Lars Mikkelsen is doing the acting for Thrawn. He is mostly known for, in America, The Witcher, House of Cards, and Star Wars Rebels, of course. He does a lot of other more international things. I didn't want to go and list all of them because I never heard of half of these shows or movies. So, but he has a very prominent career. I just don't know any of the stuff that he's in because it's not an American thing. So, but
So
good for him.
Lars Mikkelsen is a Danish actor. He is the brother of Mads Mikkelsen, who you might remember as Galen Erso in Rogue One. I most know him in live action from the show Sherlock.
Oh,
BBC
okay.
Sherlock. He appears in the 3rd season of that show, as I think Charles Augustus Magnuson is the character that he plays. But that's what I remembered him from. It was that and Rebels prior to this. And also for being Mads Mikkelsen's brother.
Good for him. Second, we have Captain of the Guard of the Night Troopers. His name is Enoch. He is played by Wes Chatham. He is known for Hunger Games Mockingjay Part 1 and 2, the movie Tenet, and the show on Amazon, The Expanse.
Great news, everyone. This is not Eli Vanto.
You know what? I think that was the rumor, right? I think did we talk about that in episode
There
0?
was a rumor that went around when Wes Chatham's casting was announced. He was only described as Thrawn's right-hand man. I almost just made an incredible Freudian slip there that we'll get to in a second. And some people were like, wait, is that Eli Vanto? And then we all looked at him and went, he better fucking not be. That is a white-ass man.
No.
And Eli Vanto is definitely not a white man.
He's also not a built fucking jock. Like, I don't know. Like, that's just not.
Yeah, we all looked at this like, this is exactly the wrong. Fortunately, this is
It's
not
definitely
Eli
not
Vanto.
who he is. Yeah.
Eli Vanto is off in the Chiss Ascendancy doing Chiss Ascendancy things.
Sure.
But yes, I do remember when that came out, we were all like, Dave.
What are you doing?
What are you doing here? What are you doing?
This is a change we cannot accept.
We cannot accept this. Nope. But fortunately, he is playing this Captain Enoch character, who's clearly a very different character from one Eli Vanto.
I like him. What do you think about the design of this suit?
No, this one I love.
Yeah.
I love the design of this guy. This guy is so weird.
It's creepy. It's cool.
It's creepy. It's almost kind of got like a Revenant vibe to it. Like he's wandering around in this suit of armor that's long, like had the glitz rusted away from it. And you can tell where it was gold, but the gold has faded. He also has like the face is so interesting to me because the whole point of the Stormtroopers was to remove their individuality. He has his own like individual faceplate, but it still completely lacks any definable markers. It's like it's supposed to invoke the Imperial officer helmets that do show the face, but the face has been filled in with this gold. It's really cool. Captain Enoch's design is really interesting to me.
I fucking love it. It's very reminiscent of, all the special troopers of the past. So Phasma, Pyre, Cardinal, all the ones that have like a special suit that's just for them, that's very designated and different. This is like, and he's just cool. He just looks fucking cool. And I love the creepy mask. I think that actually makes it even better than if he was just a gold and white stormtrooper, like with his face cut out so we could see Wes's face. I mean, that would not have been a bad choice either, because it would have been nice. However, actually, I think what it does, not only does it make it more mysterious about his character. Like we don't know what's under there and we never find out. So it's nice to be like,
Not in
oh,
this season, we don't.
yeah, so maybe he'll come back in season two and we'll get more to this character. I don't know. It seems like that could be possible because at least I don't think that casting Wes was a mistake. I feel like Dave always has like this long game mentality. So I feel like because if that character was not important or something in the future, why would you bother casting like an actual actor or something? You could just have a stunt double or somebody do this role and it wouldn't be that big a deal because then, we could replace them and change them out with other people if we had to for any reason. But the fact that he casts somebody who is a pretty prominent actor, I don't see like why that's not intentional. I feel it has to be.
I agree. There's something here that, spoilers for the end of the season, we have not figured out yet.
Right.
All that is great and all, but I want to talk about the shot of Thrawn's cunty little boot walk that he does, where he has the little Imperial slippers on and he's just sashaying along.
And he's got his little puffy pants and everything.
He's got his little
like,
puffy pants.
So cute. I love it.
Great.
Okay,
He looks great with one big exception. There's
I
one
was
thing
just about to say,
his...
like, what do you think about his portrayal in live action? Like, what do you think of the
Oh,
look?
it's fucking everything about it is great with one major exception. I love the costume. I love the way Lars does the body language for him because Lars had previously only done the voice.
Mm-hmm.
So now I think he talked about having to do like change up his body language too to portray this character because that previously would have been something the animators would have worried about. I think how they did the visual design of Thrawn and how they do, I think that's makeup that he's in is really good.
I don't know
Makeup or CG or it's a combination. I can't
think it's a
tell.
combination.
He looks like a chiss. Like he looks like a real person.
No, I like it. I think it is a combination though. I don't know, something about it. Sometimes when I watch him in the scene, it seems like it's tracking, like the blue is tracking with him, so it's not like necessarily his skin tone. I don't know. I'd have to see the making of Ahsoka and like see like a behind
which
the
I
scenes
have
of
not
it.
watched.
I was gonna say I haven't either, and I doubt he's like they show him in the makeup chair ever. So who knows?
My one and only issue is I don't think his wig is particularly good quality. I can see the kind of you can tell it's a wig. And like,
why?
It's not super noticeable unless you're like super nitpicking details. Like if you're a casual person watching Thrawn, you would never notice. It's the same with Sabine's. But I just kind of looked at it and I'm like, something about this, it just doesn't feel natural to me. Like the line between his wig and his forehead, that just doesn't feel like natural hair to me. That was my one and only complaint.
It's because he is wearing. I think it's just because you just know it's a wig, and that's
it's a wig.
That's all it is. Because I'm looking at pictures of
that
him
suspension
with his
of disbelief
hair.
isn't there.
Yeah, I'm looking at him with his natural hair, and I'm just like, I mean, you could have just dyed his hair black and called it a day. Honestly, I don't think it's that big a deal.
I'm not about to sit here and declare the show terrible because two wigs seemed off to me.
Cancel Star Wars. Cancel Kathleen Kennedy. The Thrawn wig is bad. I mean, to be fair, Ahsoka in The Mandalorian, her Montreal things did not look quite right. They kind of fixed them, moving forward. It just evolved over time as the makeup department got more comfortable with the show and everything. I think the same thing goes here. Season 1 Thrawn might not look like 100%, but then season 2, maybe they'll get a better wig. The budget will be more. Who knows? Like maybe they'll fix it.
They'll also have the movie that's coming eventually.
Oh, for sure. And then, of course, lighting wise, I'll give it to them. A lot of the scenes that Thrawn's in and all that he's in it's fairly dark, right? They don't have a ton of lighting. Maybe I'm not going to spoil anything we're going to talk about later, but on different environments later on, he might look different, in different lighting, different things. So who knows?
My next note is, oh yeah, that's definitely Thrawn. Everything from the voice to the way that Lars moves to the visual design of the character, that's him. I
almost needed him on screen longer. Like I know he was on for a long time, like in terms of like TV time, he was on for a pretty decent amount of time. But I don't know, something about when he was on screen, it's like you just wanted him to keep talking. You wanted him to keep doing something, even if like it was just simple stuff. Like you just wanted to see him do more.
Everything, they had to get a couple of things perfect in this show. Thrawn was one of them, and they nailed it. The choice to bring Lars back, the choice to consult with Timothy Zahn while they were writing the character, all of these choices, fantastic. Like, I love him. I love him so much in this show. He's easily one of the standout portrayals in the show for me. It's the same principle as Bo-Katan bringing back Katie Sackhoff to be Bo-Katan. When you get somebody who's inhabited the character for so long, they really understand who they are. And yeah, they're doing it in a different medium, but you can also tell that Lars really deeply loves being Thrawn, and he's just having his own cunty little time with it.
And it's funny because like, I remember for the longest time people were fan casting and doing all kinds of like edits online of like Pierce Brosnan or whatever, like, as Thrawn and stuff like that, like, or Benedict Cumberbatch or
Oh,
something
the
like
Pierce
that.
Brosnan thing is so funny because there's art of him in Legends that looks like Pierce Brosnan.
Yeah.
It's so fucking funny.
I just love that. But it's funny because like we thought we would see, like we had an idea of what it would be in live action one way. And then when you actually see it and you're like, no, really, only Lars could have done this. I don't think anybody could have truly done it in the same way. I think we would have had like people would have just been like, this wasn't as successful as a from cartoon to, live action transition. And it would have been bad for the show, honestly. And I think they did a great job. So props to them.
Thrawn mentions in their having their conversation, a couple of people mention there's some sort of cargo transfer that his agreement he's made with the Great Mothers, and something about the catacombs. That whatever cargo they're attempting to transfer, it's coming out of the catacombs. Catacombs being famously a place you put dead people.
Right.
So remember how I said there was no alive Night Sisters and Dathomiri around besides the Great Mothers?
Right.
Yeah, they're moving some boxes out of the place where they keep dead people. Just, we're going to keep that in mind.
And I like that Morgan's like, I've seen the catacombs. It's going to take like 3 days.
You have a lot of dead people, bro.
She's like, it's going to take at least 3 episodes to finish those guys.
I also love how when they mention Sabine, Thrawn's like, oh yeah, I know her.
The way he says that too. He's like, I've heard that name before.
Just first the way he's like, oh yeah, fucking her. And then she gets let in, she's like, oh hey bitch.
Yeah, she doesn't even phase her. She's just like, oh,
Thrawn.
it's you again.
I actually love the conversation Sabine and Thrawn have a lot, because Thrawn is a person who never ever operates on faith. And Sabine is doing this entirely on faith. And the values clash that they have in this conversation, where he's like, I don't get why you're doing this. And she's like, yeah, you wouldn't. To which his response is, perhaps not. Which one, sick reference to the books there by having Thrawn say perhaps. Enoch takes Sabine down and tells her to die well, which I find really interesting given the context of the Night Troopers in episode 8.
I also he seems it's hard to like dance around talking about him and the Night Troopers without spoiling what we know in the end, but he seems human here. Like he's just a guy, because the way he talks, the way he he talks with the mount, that's clearly a trained like animal, all this stuff. It seems like only a person can do that, right? So like for me, he's just a regular dude. Like he just happened to survive the Ezra thing, catastrophe, whatever we'll call it, unlike a lot of the troopers. So,
yes.
without getting into it too much. So he just he just seems like a dude. And then he also, I don't know if he's the one training the animals. I would assume he'd have to be if this is the case.
Somebody is. That also begs the question of like, if the Night Troopers are what they kind of seem to be in episode 8, like, do they have specialized ones?
Right.
Like, do they have ones that are pre-programmed sort of to do things? Like,
yeah, I guess because you can use.
I have a lot of logistical questions about the Night Troopers and how they work, and get to them in episode 8.
I know. It's like hard to talk about it without talking about it.
Sabine rides off with her on her howler. We will find out they're later called a howler. And this was my note that's like, this entire planet gives me Lord of the Rings vibes.
It's a whole lot of just grasslands and just nothing, like fields.
Well, it's a very specific sort of rocky grass thing, but it's also got the ancient structures. Like, this is a thing in the visual design of Lord of the Rings, is because it's the Third Age, you've got so many ancient structures sort of dotting the landscape, and there's scenes in Lord of the Rings where they're like hanging out in these old whatever. This whole place gives me Lord of the Rings vibes.
For sure. They
have this little conversation. Thrawn's like, yeah, go kill her. And my note is, yes, Thrawn is a villain. I hope we all remembered that he is the bad guy.
And I want to know the motivations for this plan, because like my only thought process is Thrawn is only doing this on purpose because what his plan is really like, I don't really care Well, that's in the next section, and I'll talk about it then. But
I was about to say, yeah, Thrawn explains
he
his
explains it
plan
later
quite
on. But
clearly
yeah,
later
yeah, yeah.
on.
It
When
just
you watch
in
this
in
scene,
this
it's
scene doesn't.
weird.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense
You're
in the
like,
scene. You're
why
like,
is he doing this?
yeah,
Well,
why go out of your way?
you also have to remember he doesn't seem particularly interested in Balin and Shin. He almost kind of seems to want to get rid of them. Balin, we will find out in a couple of episodes, is planning to just fuck off and do whatever he wants.
Right.
So Balin's angling to get away from this. Like the whole point of this was for him to get to Peridia. Because, for reasons we will find out in the next section or two, so he's kind of looking, Thrawn almost certainly has picked up on this. So Thrawn's like, let me get rid of the people who don't care. If I can get rid of Ezra and Sabine, great. If I can strand them here, great. If I can get rid of these two Force-using maniacs in the meantime, also great. All this wins for me. I just need to buy time. All right, Bradley. Remember how I teased at the beginning there was a note that kind of would have, I think, resolved your big issue with the episode?
Okay.
They should have rolled credits right here. The
Her
scene with
going
Thrawn
off
and
into the
them.
sunset or whatever. Yeah.
They have the conversation. Thrawn is like, "Go after her. I don't care what happens." Boom. The episode's over. All of that was a great villain-focused episode.
I agree.
All of that was a great episode, introducing our villain, getting into the motivations of the others around. Morgan has her conversation with the Night Sisters that we didn't even touch on. We've introduced the Great Mothers, we've got some more Balin and Shin stuff, and we've introduced Thrawn, Captain Enoch, and we've discussed a little bit. So this is a great, solid 20-minute villain episode. The credits should have ended here.
Right, because now it's the Sabine show.
Now it's the Sabine show. For the next 18 minutes, it will basically be the Sabine show.
Yeah.
And it will be really good. But we have now totally shifted focus. Midway through the episode, we have pumped the brakes and spun the wheel a little bit, and we have moved into a different lane because now we are the Sabine show. Even though the villains will turn up in scenes in the back half of this episode, they are no longer the focus. They were the focus of the first half. They are no longer the focus of the second half. And even the Ahsoka episode last week that I said should have cut in the middle, and we should have had a little more time. That was Ahsoka throughout the entire episode. The through line was Ahsoka. Shin's just kind of there for the first half of this episode. And I feel like that, again, if the show was structured as 16 episodes or 15 episodes of 20 minutes, maybe animated, maybe not, but they broke it along those lines, a lot of these sections would have felt a lot more internally strong.
Right, because I mean, I haven't read the next section yet, but if I'm like looking at my little thing, it's like that stuff should have just been all together. Like it could have just been all together. We don't need to have all this stuff randomly like before Sabine leaves. Like it doesn't make any sense. You could have had all this stuff like they were just all before. All this actually, this next section actually should take place before she's officially gone or like right before she leaves.
You mean the Thrawn conversation?
Yeah, the Thrawn conversation, even like the scene of Balin and Shin getting on their thing and just going after her, like that could have just been included in the last bit. Like it just doesn't, I don't know, it just doesn't really, because it makes sense when we talk about it, but it's just like weird.
Did you have the Thrawn conversation in the next section?
Yeah.
Okay.
It comes after she...
You want to read that and just insert it at the beginning or in the end of the last one?
Well, it comes after she gets attacked by bandits, so that's why
it does not.
It in the episode it does.
It absolutely does not.
Him talking privately with Elspeth is
no. Okay, we're talking about two different Thrawn. We're talking two different Thrawn explains his evil plan scenes. I was talking about the Thrawn explains his evil plan scene where he explains his evil plan to Balin and Shin. That was the end of this section.
Yeah, I put that.
Okay, you're talking about Thrawn explains his evil plan to Morgan, which is a different Thrawn monologues about his evil plan scene. Good God, this man monologues about his evil plan so much.
That's what I'm saying. It doesn't. It's, I don't know. It's weirdly broken up. Section 4. Riding her howler on the steps of the landscape, Sabine is attacked by bandits. She defeats the bandits using her lightsaber, but her scanner is damaged in the fight. Balin and Shin pursue Sabine on their howlers, while at the Chimera, night troopers load storage containers onto the ship, and Thrawn privately tells Elspeth that the fate of Ren, Bridger, Balin, and Shin ultimately does not matter to him.
This ambush scene, this scene where Sabine gets ambushed, this would have been an incredible cold open to an episode.
I almost, like when you said that, like, okay, her leaving is the end cap of the episode, then cut to black. Opening, cold open, she gets attacked and she survives, and then it says part 7, whatever.
Ahsoka.
Ahsoka, yeah.
Ahsoka, part 6.5.
6.5.
Turtle
right.
people.
Turtle people. I like it.
Uh, Sabine and the Howlers' big day out. I don't fucking know what you call this.
They need to make a children's book that's just Sabine and the Howler, and that's it. Like it's
But this ambush would have been an incredible opening to an episode.
I agree. It was really cool. And
Because it
the
sets up the relationship between Sabine and the Howler.
right.
It damages the scanner, so now we've set up the overarching problem of the episode that she now has to find Ezra without this scanner. What's she going to do? Is she going to rely on her training? Is she going to trust in the Force? Is she going to get frustrated? Because we've seen in the couple of episodes ago that's her main flaw is she gets frustrated and makes her angry.
You know what's funny is we were talking about this yesterday. They announced an Ahsoka comic book series that's just going to chronicle the 8 episodes. This would have been its own episode of a cartoon.
Yeah.
It would be Sabine by herself with the Howler looking for Ezra the entire time, and they would have teased him at the very end or something. Like it would have
I
been
need
like,
them to fucking stop with these comic adaptations of shows.
I know. Unless you're gonna do something slightly different in the comic, like then what's the point?
Yeah. Like I've seen ones from the shots from the Obi-Wan Kenobi, and it's literally they just redraw. They just like fucking trace over the. You guys need to at least the Mandalorian ones. I read a couple of the Mandalorian ones. At least those are comics that somebody drew with their hands.
Yeah.
That they're trying to do an adaptation, but whatever. I'm not going to complain about that because I don't want to tangent too much in this episode.
No. I just this is a light section, but I think that this little bit was so like it has so much meat to it. This tiny little section that like you could have built a whole episode around this. Like I think it has interesting bits and things. I think they should have gone a little more into who the bandits were, why are they there, what species are they? Like they're just random to me in this episode. I don't know what they are. I like their design. I like the
I
kind of
love their design.
The samurai-esque like design is really cool.
Which I think is really interesting.
Yeah, I don't know what they're just called bandits of Peridia. I don't know what
we don't know anything about them.
Yeah, it just says unknown species. So it's like they could be anything. But they also ride howlers, which I thought was interesting. So that clearly is the mount of choice in this section of the planet, I guess. I don't know.
Well, villains riding wolf-like creatures is
sure
a common thing. It's in Lord of the Rings.
I was just about to say they give orc vibes.
They look like wargs from Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, they sound like evil orc-like things or something. I don't know what they would be, but
yeah. I also want to note in this section, it's really interesting the way that Sabine fights, because I noticed that her fighting style, she fights like a Mandalorian. She's still fighting like a Mandalorian. Like the way that Den fights with his Beskar armor, she's fighting the same way. Where blaster bolts are kind of a secondary concern because they're just whacking her chest plate and her back plate as she's doing this fight. I love the scene of Thrawn explaining his evil plans to Morgan because I love when Thrawn explains his evil plans.
I like that he just doesn't give a fuck about Baylan or Shin. He's just like, well, they're extraneous people anyway. Like, our only goal is to get off this fucking planet. Like, I don't give a fuck about Jedis. I don't give a fuck about ex-Jedis. I don't give a fuck about Sabine. Like, they're gone now. So, like, let's just hurry up our shit and let's get out of here. And
he's like, the little Force users will do their little Force user thing and we'll just be off here doing the real plot.
Section 5. Sabine berates her Howler for abandoning her during the bandit fight, calling it a coward. However, she decides to give the creature another chance. The Howler leads Ren to a valley where they encounter a Noti, initially disguised as a rock. Ren recognizes the Rebel Alliance symbol on a necklace the creature is wearing, indicating a potential connection to Ezra. It signals for her to follow into the valley. Meanwhile, Baylan and Shin track down Sabine, and they discover the remains of a battle between Ren and the bandits, deducing that Ren was still alive, and at that moment, the bandits approach the two.
The scene of Sabine and the Howler, when I first watched it, I was like, oh, haha, that's really funny. The second time I watched it, I went, oh, no, wait. This is kind of a microcosm for Sabine's relationship with everybody, because Sabine has deep abandonment issues. And that was her whole thing at the start of the season, was she felt like Ahsoka had abandoned her. She did not want to be the one to extend her hand out and say, I want to come back, because she was scared of Ahsoka's response. So now in the same position, she's upset because the Howler abandoned her during the fight, but the Howler still keeps trying to come back. And so Sabine's eventually like, you know what? Okay, I will give you another chance the same way I gave Ahsoka another chance. And then immediately the Howler ends up leading her to the Noti. So that works out for her. It's this interesting little microcosm of her character throughout this entire journey.
And I just love the personality of the Howler in general. Like, I feel like I know that it can't understand her in the sense that it speaks basic, but like it knows her feelings, and like I guess that's just like a force thing, but it just understands her in that way, kind of. I don't know. I it's like a dog. Dogs just know things, and it's just funny.
I like how there's a common saying with regards to dogs that there are no bad dogs, there are just bad owners. And I'm getting that sense with the Howler because the Howlers are presented as this very threatening, like terrifying species. We're introduced to it, and it's supposed to be like unnerving to the audience when she first walks up to the Howler. But the second he gets like an owner that treats him like Sabine treats him, then suddenly he's just a big dog.
Yeah, he's
He's
just
just
a
a big
puppy.
good boy.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, you have not been treated with a modicum of kindness in your entire life. Okay. And suddenly I am willing to throw myself in front of a train for the Howler.
I almost want there to, I mean, again, knowing that there's going to be a season 2, I want the Howler to show back up in season 2 and meet the cat. I feel like that is a scene we need. It's going to happen at some point. It has to.
Just as a reminder, Merle the Lothcat is fine. He is okay. He can enter it. He now owns the tower.
And
right? That's his tower now. He
the
can come
cat
and go
is
from
going,
it as he pleases.
the cat is going to absolutely hate the Howler.
So they show up and Sabine's like, yeah, it's a rock. My first thought, which is not for Bradley, it's for the audience, was, oh my God, geode. Bradley will not understand this, but the audience will. Some people will laugh and we will move on. So we get our introduction to the Noti in this scene. The Noti people are a turtle people with rocks on their backs that wear old-timey waistcoats. And this is the best thing to happen in the show.
I don't know
This
how I
is
feel
so
about that.
fucking stupid, but
I
it's
don't
so
get it.
fucking Star Wars. It's
You know what?
weird.
You're right. It's very Ewok. It's very like just weird little alien thing that's cute, but also weird and then adorable. And then just like,
Well,
why are they here?
keep this in mind. We talked about in a previous episode that if you're going to go to a different galaxy, the fundamental rules of the universe have to remain the same, but the rules of that galaxy are going to be different. Of course, the turtle people have waistcoats, Bradley. This is a completely different galaxy.
Yeah, I love that they wear clothes. They're just like, we're kind of a nomadic species, but we have like these very like old-timey kind of outfits. I don't know. It's just adorable.
It's great. I love them so much. They're fantastic. The exchange between Sabine and the Noti where they figure out kind of over the language barrier, they figure out that they both know Ezra. I just like it because I like the idea of symbols, and I like the idea of the use of symbols in culture as a way to communicate across gaps. I like the way that a commonality in symbols allows people to communicate with each other regardless of whether or not they can actually understand each other. I like that tiny moment, and I think that's really cool.
I also like that when she's trying to communicate with them, they say like blah 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 Ezra Bridger, like blah blah blah. It's like,
Yeah, the random name
yeah, I love it. It's
being
so
brought
funny.
up. Over on the Shin and Balin side of things, their conversation, there's so much to this conversation. I can't get into every single detail. Remember how I said back in episode 3, I remember I said take note of the term the Boken saber, which is the weaker wooden training saber that they use. Yeah, so Balin calls Ezra part of a generation of, quote, Boken Jedi who are weaker and not quite the real thing and trained outside of the Order, which is, fuck you, Balin.
I'm like, you basically your apprentice is not that the same description.
She brings this up. She says, am I not the same? And he goes, no, they were trained to be Jedi. I trained you to be something more. Again, going back to the idea that he's training her not in any particular way, but specifically he's trying to mold her into what he wants her to be.
Yeah, it's just weird because his analogy, it just doesn't make sense because like that would mean that like Ezra and Luke are weaker versions of Jedi
That's what he
because
thinks.
yeah,
He's
but it's like
wrong.
not
He's
clearly not
not
true.
correct.
Right.
No, he's not correct in what he's saying,
Yeah.
but this is the character's analysis that the Jedi that were trained out in the wild are weaker. And but even he thinks the order itself is weak. We've get the meme quote in this episode. The I miss the idea of it, but not the truth, the weakness quote
Mm.
from
Yeah.
Balin, which in addition to being a funny meme, is very indicative of how he feels, which he's trying to do better. He's trying to break the cycle, and he's trying to do it by listening to something calling for him. Something out there is calling Balin.
I
Some
wonder if we're
power
ever gonna find out
greater,
what that is.
some power greater than even the night sisters that they might be fleeing from,
Mm.
that he speculates. We will come back to this. But remember I said at this beginning too, the statues being like on the surface of Malachor and there being something under the surface. I think there are clues throughout these back 3 episodes that something is beneath Peridia. There's something lurking here. There's some darkness under Peridia or something that Balin wants or someone that's reaching out to him, as it's said in this scene. And the speculation right now is it could be some entity. We also know that Palpatine would also hear calls from the unknown regions, which we now know is most likely Exegol. There's a lot going on here.
Section 7. Finally, Sabine arrives at the Noti settlement. She is met by one Ezra Bridger, and they are finally reunited. Ezra wonders how she found Peridia, but Sabine deflects the question. Meanwhile, at the Night Sister Fortress, the Great Mothers inform Thrawn of an approaching Jedi to Peridia. Thrawn questions if it could be Ahsoka Tano, considering she was deceased after her duel with Balin. Morgan, relying on Skull's assurance of Tano's death, deems it impossible. However, Thrawn, cautioning against underestimating Jedi, demands information on her history and prepares for her arrival.
Oh, hi, Ezra Bridger. Bradley,
Oh,
you want to tell
hi.
us who's playing Ezra Bridger?
Yes, Ezra Bridger is being played by one Aman Esfandi. He is known for films such as King Richard and The Inspection. He also is a musician, and he makes music under the name Dragon Wolf.
I fucking love this guy.
He's
This
honestly
dude, this
perfect.
dude, in addition to being gorgeous, which he is, this
Yes.
man is fucking gorgeous. In addition to being gorgeous, he is not only super talented, but he's just cool as hell. Like when the SAG strike ended and he could finally start posting, this man just is Ezra Bridger.
He really.
Like everything he posts on social media, I'm like, yeah, that's what Ezra Bridger would post.
Like he's so funny. Even like I saw stuff where like he was signing his Funko Pops or whatever as Jabba the Hutt.
Yeah, no, he gets it.
Like he
Like
gets the joke.
he's clearly a big Rebels fan. He's clearly read stuff. Like he's posted about reading the Star Wars books. Like clearly this man one loves Ezra Bridger and you can tell, but he like gets him. Like the way that he shifts into the Ezra Bridger like stances and the way that he puts the intonations on the voice, he understands. This is Ezra Bridger. They went out and they just found Ezra Bridger.
Yeah, I don't know how they were able to capture his essence so well in this first of all, in just this person, let alone the actor portraying Ezra's mannerisms and just mentality and just everything. Like, I don't know how they did it. I really don't. I mean, props to the casting and props to Amon. Like, I don't understand how they did it so perfectly, but they did.
Easily, without a doubt, one of the best casting decisions of the show, Iman Esfandi. And this is a show where I don't think a single casting choice has been a dud. There has not been a single one that's been off. Every actor that they found perfectly embodies the roles of their character.
It's so true. And you know what I do like though is that again, knowing we have a season 2 and knowing that we're in part 6, right? And we've introduced these two major players in the Star Wars universe, Ezra and Thrawn. And we're only in the 6th episode and there's only 8. So that means these two actors only have 3 episodes to really, kind of wow us and like give us a performance. I love the fact that, I mean, spoiler, they both survived by the end of the season. And we're going to get to have them start from the very beginning of the next season. Like, it's not
yes,
like
we get get them the whole
the
time.
whole time. So we don't have to have this like truncated version of these characters like we kind of do in this season, which I do think is a misstep only because they're so good at what they do. Like it's like it sucks that we didn't get them in more episodes. But, you know.
The only note I have this about this scene, this entire scene, it's very sweet. It's very nice. Sabine and Ezra reunite. There's a little bit of tension because Sabine doesn't want to talk about how she got there. There's a little bit of tension because like Ezra's like, "Oh, I'm so happy to go home," and Sabine's like,
Awkward.
awkward. But my only thing that I specifically wrote down was, yes, of course, Ezra Bridger is hanging out with the turtle people and learned to speak their language.
Oh, of course. I mean,
Obviously, he
yeah.
did.
I mean, he had like 10 years to do it, so it's like, why not?
Yep. And the fact he's 10 years out of the game will come up in the next episode. But yeah, like if you're going to ask me where's Ezra Bridger, yeah, obviously this is where Ezra Bridger would wind up. This is what he would end up doing.
Also, it's so interesting to think about that 10-year gap because when he left in Rebels, like he had no idea like if they won the war, if this all he did was help them win the battle essentially, right? Because all he did was take Thrawn out of the equation. So he's like giving them a decent chance to win the war, right? That was kind of the whole purpose essentially of getting rid of Thrawn. He has no idea. Like, did they win? Did they lose? What's been going on in the Republic for the last, or what he used to think was the Empire for the last 10 years? We don't know. Like, so I feel like immediately he would be like, so did we win? Like, what happened?
Some people have actually identified the Battle of Lothal and specifically Thrawn being removed from the equation as the beginning of the end of the Empire.
Yeah.
Some people have looked at charted the thing and said that is specifically the moment because Thrawn was one of the only Imperial officers, if not the only Imperial officer, besides maybe Tarkin, who wasn't completely self-interested.
Right.
Even Palpatine and Vader are incredibly selfish people who are incredibly self-centered and self-interested. Thrawn has his own agenda, and his agenda is the protection of the Chiss ascendancy. But in order to fulfill that, he's completely detached. He's not doing the things he's doing because he personally wants power. He's doing the things he's doing because he has his own goals and his own motivations. And those motivations are kind of to an extent selfless. He is focused on protecting the ascendancy, and the best way to do that is to keep a strong Imperial presence in the known galaxy. So removing Thrawn from the equation, and then barely a year later, I think, the Death Star explodes and kills Tarkin. And these are the two biggest losses to Imperial High Command. The Imperial High Command never recovers from losing Thrawn and Tarkin. Everybody else they put in charge, Tag, everybody else is either completely unable to have opinions of their own or thoughts of their own and are just in the machine doing their job like Piet, or they're people like Orson Krennic, who's completely self-interested and just wants to rise through the ranks, who, dies before the Death Star, but it's people like Krennic. So Ezra Bridger significantly contributed to the rebellion winning the war. He doesn't know any of that. He has no idea what he did.
That's so crazy to me, but it's cool.
Meanwhile, back on the penetrated Star Destroyer, which I literally wrote in my notes.
Of course you did.
Meanwhile, on the bottoming Star Destroyer, I'm sorry, again, this is just a note for me and no one else. Claudia Black is such a good actress, and she's got such a varied catalog. When she speaks, I hear Morrigan. I can't not. I've played hundreds of hours of Dragon Age Origins. I've played over 1,000 hours of Dragon Age Inquisition. I hear Morrigan say the word Jedi and my brain breaks, fundamentally cracks down at a structural level. That was just a note for me and no one else. Thrawn kind of has his moment where he's like mansplaining Elspeth's own culture to her, which not great, but he does have this hilarious line that I wrote down, which his overall point is don't underestimate the Jedi, which reasonable. But he has this specific line that I just want to bring up for no particular reason. Death and resurrection are common concepts in both the Night Sisters and the Jedi. Dave, what did you know when you wrote that line?
That's a weird line that clearly has no ulterior meaning or anything.
No relevance to anything that's coming up.
No one's ever really gone, is what Thrawn just said.
No one's ever really gone. I wonder if Dave knew that they were going to bring Asajj Ventress back when he wrote this line.
Maybe.
My final note, he does say he wants to know who Ahsoka's master is. Would it surprise you to learn this line was also very controversial?
Is it because of I guess I'll just dub it Thrawn 2, the second book.
Thrawn Alliances, Thrawn 2, Electric Boogaloo, yeah.
Yeah.
Anakin specifically mentions Ahsoka, and Ahsoka was the one who designed a move that Thrawn really likes and adapts later.
Hmm.
So a lot of people were very mad that he does not seem to know who Ahsoka Tano's master is when
Yeah.
she was mentioned. My thing is, I'm like, that was 30 years ago.
That's my defense too. He's like, give him a fucking break. He's
Like,
smart dude, but like, come on.
he's a smart dude and he remembers a lot of details, but I don't remember. Well, I mean, I was 3 years old 30 years ago, but even like 10 years ago, I don't have a lot of strong memories
Right.
of specific people.
But you could also argue that like 30 years before this point, Thrawn was in his 40s, like or 30s or 40s. Like so
Yeah,
it's
he's
like
like he's not a young guy now
no,
either.
he's much older. So
It's like I couldn't tell you. You want to know a sad fact on the podcast, Bradley?
oh God.
I could not tell you the names of anyone you and I went to class with except for you and I.
Not a single other person.
I cannot tell you the name of a single.
Couldn't even
I
tell you
remember
the
my
professor's
dramatic.
name.
I could tell you the professors' names.
I couldn't even do that.
I could tell you about half our professors' names.
Nope, couldn't do it.
I could do two of them.
That's how
I
close
remember
me and
two of
Thrawn
them.
are. I don't know.
I remember my dramatic writing people because there were only like 10 of us. So like
That's
obviously
easier,
I
though.
remember them.
Yeah.
But like random people, like the people that you and I took all those classes with, no, I don't
No.
remember a single one of their names.
But again, in his defense, it's like, why would I hold a person's name, one person, singular person's Padawan's name in my brain, like when I have to deal with all this other shit that I've been dealing with, like in the
Right.
Empire and then the Rebels and then the Chiss Ascendancy and all that kind of stuff. Like he's got a lot to think about, and
And
I don't think he cared.
we'll see later on, like the memory is jogged and he's like, oh no, that's Anakin's Padawan. Okay, I know what's going on here.
Yeah,
I remember
yeah.
Anakin Skywalker. He clearly knows Anakin Skywalker. So the line was controversial, but it kind of gets explained in the next episode.
Sure.
That's all my notes. Do you have any additional notes on this section?
No, I guess I can jump right into the directed by if you're good.
Bradley, who directed and who wrote this episode, Bradley?
Okay.
Who put
this,
pen to paper and typed the words that we just watched on this episode?
This episode was directed by Jennifer Getzinger, hopefully I'm saying that right, known for directing episodes of shows such as Mad Men, Westworld, Marvel's Jessica Jones, Daredevil, and Agent Carter, and How to Get Away with Murder. She wrote 3 episodes of.
She
Was Just
directed
for
3
You.
episodes.
I'm sorry, directed 3 episodes of Just for You. So
Yeah, I looked up to see if they were episodes that I specifically remember. Not off the top of my head.
gotcha.
She directed an episode in season 2, an episode in season 3, and an episode in season 5. She also she's directed a bunch of shows that I really like
Some big shows. Like I was
some big shows too. Like I was looking through some of these and I was
It
like,
was hard for me to pick ones because I was like, well, she's actually pretty prolific. I was like, oh, these are like some really big shows. So that's why I couldn't name all of them. But those were just ones that stood out to me that were pretty big. So
and she only usually does, it looks like, 1 or 2 episodes. She directed 10 episodes of Mad Men, but usually it's 1, 2, or 3. I think there's one that she did 4 episodes of, but she usually just comes in and does an episode. And she did a really great job with this one. Who wrote this episode, Bradley?
episode was written by Dave Filoni.
Okay. Do you have any final thoughts on this episode?
So my final thoughts, I actually liked this episode a lot. I think I agree with you. I think it kind of felt like a first part of an episode that was more like, let's get to Thrawn. And then the second part of the episode was more like, let's get to Ezra. And it was kind of like these are 2 different episodes, really. It doesn't really feel too cohesive. I also feel like that, like, usually you want some kind of character arc in the episode. I mean, the villains don't have any character arc other than just, we found Thrawn. Like, there's nothing
Hooray!
there. Yeah, it's really, that's all it is. And Sabine's is just been her story the whole time. I mean, if anything, this is the end of her arc of, I found Ezra. I mean, that's about it. I don't think it's any, like, she doesn't go through any emotional kind of changes. I mean, she's still fucking lying to Ezra. She didn't tell him how she got there. She didn't do anything. So there's still room for her character to grow and do things later on in the season, which will eventually happen. For now, yeah, no changes have really been made. So I felt like I don't like using the F word for this episode, but it's a transitional episode as well.
There we
So
go. What we would call a moving people into place episode.
yes,
No, I thought this was a really solid. If you think of the back 3 episodes of this show as a trilogy, as a 3-part finale.
absolutely, yeah.
This is the first act of that. And the first act is notably gonna not contain as many emotional beats
Right.
as the second two, because we've introduced 6 new characters on screen in just this 45-minute episode. We've got 6 new characters. We've got to move Sabine into place to be with Ahsoka. We've got to move Balin and Shin away from Thrawn and co. We have to redo the entire dynamics because Thrawn is here now. So I think it does a good job of moving all of those around. I loved the Sabine stuff in the back half of the episode. We didn't cover it a lot, but she has a lot of great little character moments and a lot of great little choices that Natasha makes in bringing this character to life, and her interaction with Ezra was everything that I wanted it to be. Absolutely incredible work by her in this episode. I do kind of wish it had been split into 2 because it really is a two-part episode. But I do see how a lot of it is setting up Thrawn and moving everybody into position so that when we get into the next episode, we can have the next episode, in which Ahsoka comes back and gets to be a much bigger presence in the show called Ahsoka. Alrighty. Next week, we are covering Ahsoka Episode 7, Part 7, some other words that I didn't look up before I said this. Pluggables time! We have too many of these now. You and I are doing too much stuff.
That's why I had to simplify it down to my one show, because I was like, I can't do all of it, guys.
You can watch a bunch of shows that Bradley has worked on in some capacity on both Peacock and Bravo. We only promote one at a time. Right now we are promoting the one that is airing, which is Married to Medicine Season 10. You can find me over on the For Light and Dice TTRPG podcast set in the High Republic era. We are about to record our next session literally tomorrow, so we will be picking up on the big emotional beat where we left off. I have also launched a gay thriller series set in the porn industry. It is called Beach House Studios. The Beach House is one word with one H. You can find that on Amazon, where you can purchase it outright, or if you have a Kindle Unlimited subscription, you can get it there. That was my very succinct
I like it.
pluggables. You can tell I practiced saying that the Beach House is one H, one word, because I've had to explain it to so many. I'm waiting ultimately for Bradley to finish his ARC and get his, I'm sure no doubt, glowing review of the ending.
Of course.
Alrighty, well, that's it for this week. Bradley, go ahead and run these socials. Thank you for listening to this episode of Gold Squadron Gays. Did Charles fuck something up? Email us at goldsquadrongays@gmail.com to let us know. You can also find us on Twitter at @GoldSquadGays, and you can find us on TikTok and Instagram at @GoldSquadronGays. You can also find us on YouTube at our Gold Squadron Gays YouTube channel, where we post full episodes of this show. Finally, if you liked the show, don't forget to rate us and give us a review on your favorite podcast platform. That allows other people to find our show. As always, thank you for listening to Gold Squadron Gays, and we'll see you next week. Take us straight into the first part. We are just going straight into it today.
We sure are.
Rather like a tower going straight into the bottom of a Star Destroyer. Be prepared for a lot of these jokes, Bradley.
Okay.
The Chimera is being penetrated.
Oh, I was like, what? I don't get this joke, but okay.
You will be sick of these by the end of the back 3 episodes of this series. Every time I see this, I'm like, ah, yes. The grand tradition of Castle Dildo.